Alright, so let's talk about some Star Wars The Last Jedi spoilers featuring some very fascinating scenes that are supposed to be coming up in the movie. Now, this information is coming from Reddit, so take this with a grain of salt. It may or may not be accurate. It's kind of weird to figure these things out and decode them because some of these leaks are indeed true and some of these are indeed not true. You got people from the studio who are leaking stuff out. Then you have, of course, the obvious phonies. And this particular leak that we're talking about today has to do with a Forceback scene. Not a flashback. A Forceback is the same thing, though, in The Last Jedi. That's supposed to show a lot of very interesting story elements going into the, to continue the story, so to speak. Of course, in the Force Awakens film, there was the big Forceback when Rey touched the lightsaber, and you saw several scenes, with Kylo Ren killing people. You saw the scene of Luke touching R2. Now we're going to have more in The Last Jedi. So let's go ahead and dig into it here, and I will go ahead and give you my thoughts as we go through. So, user Kid Blue News says there are a few Forcebacks in The Last Jedi longer than the ones in The Force Awakens. The first happens to Rey. She sees herself saying goodbye to who we assume is her father and going into a ship with her mom. You don't really see anything of note of the mom, and the man you think is her dad is wearing a rebel pilot uniform like Luke wore on Hoth or in Star Wars. So the red kind of rebel pilot uniform. So I guess her dad was in the rebellion. She sees a stone hallway with a young boy standing at the end of it crying. The hallway explodes as the Knights of Ren destroy it. Sounds of murder. The same boy crying continues and some echoed screams behind. Kylo Ren comes to the scene in his TFA getup. Briefly sees Snoke in the flesh. So the interesting thing is, who is this young boy? It could be a younger Kylo Ren. Not really sure what to make of all this, or it could be somebody else for all we know. But it looks like she's having another flashback of what happens when the Knights of Ren, kill the Jedi Temple, or the Jedi in the Jedi Temple. But again, I could be wrong on that. Now, the next two, I don't know if they're really Forcebacks, but one is from Luke. He's meditating at one point in the film, and he's on Tatooine, hearing the words of Obi-Wan giving the twisted and evil speech. He sees the funeral where he burnt his father, construction of the temple with Leia holding a baby. Now, the scene where he burned his father, they could just use stock footage from Jedi. I mean, that's fine. But I do like this right here. Construction of the temple with Leia holding a baby, which is, of course, Kylo Ren, and a few happy moments with a young Ben, then the attack on his temple. So I wonder if they're going to do some of that face technology to make Carrie Fisher look younger just for that scene. Old Luke is shown visibly discomforted but continues his meditation. You see a younger Luke angry, seeing the rubble of the temple. He sets it to fire himself. He gives something to R2 before leaving, which we presume is the part of the map that he had in The Force Awakens. We see an X-Wing fly towards Ahch-To, then a somewhat younger Luke, still old but looks younger than Hamill picks so far, walking up the steps like Rey did. So that's pretty cool that we get to see that. Even though I do feel like we're probably going to end up at some point getting a prequel to the sequel. See what I'm saying? We're probably going to end up getting a prequel movie to the sequel trilogy, which would explain a lot of this and actually show it to us. Now, the last one here I think is the most interesting thing because this... Okay, so when Last Jedi was announced, before it was called Last Jedi Episode VIII, Kathleen Kennedy said that Han Solo was going to be in the movie. Well, no, she didn't. Let me rephrase that. She did not say Han Solo. She said everybody from The Force Awakens would come back in The Last Jedi, and thus people assumed that Han was going to come back somehow. But others thought, well, maybe she meant everybody but Han. I mean, you know what I mean? Maybe she didn't mean Han. Maybe she just meant every other cast member except for Harrison Ford. Because there was no talk at all of Harrison Ford being in this film. Well, if this is true, he is in the movie. It's just going to be part of a Forceback. So it says here, the final flashback or Forceback is from Kylo. He's in his private quarters, similar to the Force Awakens, talking to Vader's helmet. You see himself, and by the way, there is a supposed toy of him where he says, tell me more about the dark side or something like that. So this could be possible. It says here, you see himself with Han as a young boy sitting in the co-pilot seat of the Falcon. So there you go. We might see Harrison Ford there. Han has a couple lines, though you don't see his face. Now, it could be Harrison Ford just recording audio for this. I mean, his voice hasn't changed that much. So I wouldn't be surprised if Harrison just came back to just do a couple lines here and there, just audio-wise, that could work. Just Ben looking up towards the pilot seat. "Don't tell your mother," Han's only line when he motions for Ben to try piloting. You then hear Han's line from The Force Awakens, "Come back, we miss you," as it shows Han touching Kylo's face after he's impaled. It ends there. Kylo crushes his helmet. So that might be where his helmet ends up getting crushed. So that's, of course, from Reddit. Very interesting stuff. I would love to see it, honestly. I do like this. Very, very, very cool. Just kind of showing what happened in between Jedi and this movie. It's just a tragedy that the whole Star Wars saga of the Skywalkers is just one big tragedy. Like, these guys try to make families, you know, from Anakin onto Leia. You know, they try to have children and just kind of live a normal life, and then something just happens to screw it all up. And that's really the whole thing, the whole reason as to why Luke is, you know, I guess why Luke is looking for the first Jedi Temple to figure it out. Anyways, thank you so very much for checking out the video. Let me know your thoughts down below. What do you think about this? Do you think it's nonsense? Do you think it could be legitimate? And who do you think the young boy is? And do you like the idea of Harrison coming back? Let me know. Thank you. And remember to subscribe. More of these videos coming. I'll talk to y'all later.